Kumusta mga kaisla? Drini here. Today we have another build video. This build is around 40,000 pesos or around $800 US. And this will be used for work and light gaming. Parts breakdown. For our CPU, we have an AMD Ryzen 3100. For our motherboard, we have an MSI B450 Mortar Max. For our graphics card, we have an ASUS Strix GTX 1650 Super. For our RAM, we have 2 sticks of 8GB Hyper Fury for a total of 16GB RAM. For our storage, we have a 500GB Kingston NVMe and a 1TB of Seagate Barracuda. And to power everything, we have a Silverstone Strider 600 watts, and for our case, it is a Silverstone Fara R1. And now, let's build this. First, let's grab our motherboard and our CPU. Since we're doing an AMD build, this arrow should match the arrow on your motherboard. When you lock down the lever, there should be no resistance whatsoever. Since we're using the stock cooler with spring screws, we should remove these mounting lugs, since this is only needed on a CPU cooler with retention clips. Let's install our CPU cooler. The CPU cooler has a pre-applied thermal paste, so we don't need to apply any. When installing the CPU cooler, make sure to tighten each corner diagonally to distribute the pressure equally. Installing our RAM sticks. We need to install it here on the RAM slots. If you only have a pair, it is best to start at the right slot, then skip a slot. Make sure that this notch would match the ridge on your motherboard. Let's have a closer look. So this is the ridge and this is the notch. Just make sure that it lines up together and there will be no problem. When installing the RAM stick, it is best to press both ends at the same time. If it is installed properly, the RAM levers will lock the RAM stick in place. Installing our NVMe M.2 SSD. Our operating system will be installed here and most of our games and applications. This will be our primary drive. Similar to our RAM stick installation, you need to match the notch and ridge. We need a screw to hold this down. Don't worry, it is located in your motherboard box. We just need to screw this in place and we're good. Using M.2 SSD versus SATA SSD is much cleaner because we're using less cables. Let's install our graphics card. Let us first remove the protective stickers, protective film at the back plate, and this PCIe connector cover. Again, similar to our other components, we just need to match the notch and ridge. Again, hold your card on both ends and align it to the PCIe slot and press it in. And now we have securely installed our GPU card. This is just a boot test to make sure everything works before placing it inside our case. So we're gonna remove our graphics card later on and place it back in. Now we need our power supply. This will power up our motherboard, CPU, and graphics card. This is a non-modular power supply, so we have a lot of cables here. This 24-pin connector would power up our motherboard. So this male connector would match the female 24-pin in our motherboard. And make sure that this is locked in properly. To power our processor, we need this male 8-pin connector that is labeled CPU. Just connected it here. And now we need our PCIe 8-pin cable for our graphics card. Our graphics card only needs 6 pins, so we need to remove the 2-pin pigtail and connect our 6-pin to the 6-pin connector in our graphics card. Now to run our test boot, I'm shorting the power pin here on the motherboard to turn on our system. So it looks like everything is working. The BIOS is booting up, so let's build this inside our case. Installing it inside our case is just repeating the same process we did earlier. Before placing our motherboard and securing it in the standoffs, don't forget to place the input and output shield. Well, because if you screw in your motherboard and place other components, you need to remove the screws again and remove everything and place back the input and output shield. So don't forget to place it first. So to secure our motherboard, we just need to screw it in. If there are any missing standoffs, just look for it in the accessory box of your case. So now this is just a time-lapse of what we did earlier with a little bit of modification. In installation, this is much secure. And since we've tested it earlier, there will be no problem when we run our system. since we've boot tested it earlier. Okay, so let's slow down a bit. Here we're going to install the front panel USB, power switch, reset switch, and audio ports. We need to refer to the manual since the location can change depending on the manufacturer. The USB 3.0 and front panel audio or USB 2.0 can be installed easily because the headers will match a specific port on your motherboard. So it's almost impossible to get it wrong. The difficult things to install are the switch and reset button and the HDD light and LED light because they only need two headers or single header when installing them.